You're listening to For Art's Sake with Paul Gill on Athlone Community Radio. Later on this month, on the 25th of November, The Matchmaker will come to the Dean Crowe Theatre. The Matchmaker, famously written by John B. Keane. And I'm very pleased to have on the line John Kenny, who is going to star in The Matchmaker. John, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks very much. Thank you for having me.
John, I've been a fan of yours for years, and about 10 years ago I saw you in the Backstage Theatre in Longford. You were doing a solo comedy gig. But in the middle of the show, you impressed me greatly because you came out on stage, and I remember there was just a single spotlight on you. And you did this piece, and the line that stays with me all these years is that the winds must be different in England.
Yes.
And as far as I remember, it was about two guys who had grown up together in Ireland. They used to run down a hill. I don't know whether they actually jumped off a cliff or whether it was just a high hill, but the wind used to blow them back. And you used to have great crack with this. Yeah. And then in later years, when they grew up, they went to England and they were working on building sites. And one of them was killed off a building site. That's what I gathered from the piece.
That's kind of the gist of it, all right.
Yeah, but I found it very moving. I found it very poignant. It was funny in ways as well, but I just thought it was remarkably different to throw that in the middle of a comedy gig. And it impressed me greatly.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I did similar characters down through the years, the odd times. You know, Uncle Martin, who was another guy who was lived in England all his life and used to work in Fords and Dagenham, and kind of similar story. I mean, it was quite funny. And then at the end of it, you suddenly realised that he was actually his was a very different tale in some ways. But he was coming back to Ireland, but he was still living in England. But he was very lonesome because his family had moved on and grown up, and he was in the middle of a city now on his own. And his wife had passed away, you know.
Yeah.
So, no, I kind of like the idea of. I've always thought. I always think myself, even in every humour, you could do that with most storylines, with humour lines, you know, because there is a very kind of close link between probably humour and tragedy, really. You know what I mean? Because it's never too far away. It's the same in our, I suppose, in normal life, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's the way life is. We never know what's around the corner, or we don't know what's going to happen, you know, in our lives, health-wise, or, you know, anyway. So they kind of run parallel nearly, you know, tragedy and comedy. It's just different things at different times, you know.
We use humour to get ourselves through tragic situations, I suppose. Okay, and it works very well. Well, you played a lot of straight roles in your career. Then you were in Les Miserables, you were in Angela's Ashes, of course, and now you're playing this part in The Matchmaker by John B. Keane. For people who aren't familiar with the work, what would you say it's about?
I think Keane, really, he's just highlighting loneliness, lack of companionship, humanity. And even more so, I suppose he's only writing about it from the point of view of I suppose he's writing it from the point of view of rural life, because that's where he's based. But I suppose if you were to take a song like Ralph McTell, when he writes about the streets of London, in the middle of a metropolis like London, he's saying the same thing as John B. Keane is saying in the Matchmaker, you know. And there's great humour, of course, in The Matchmaker, and Keane's language is absolutely, you know, it's brilliant. It's beautiful stuff to work with, you know, because it's quite poetic. Even the most normal thing that Keane says, he seems to be able to put something into it, that just that bit of colour or that something, you know, that's special about it. So,
yeah, he paints pictures with his words.
He does very much. He is, yeah, and I think that's a real Irish tradition of that sort of, you know, visualisation. You know, people still do it in Ireland when they describe something. They don't go, you know, we kind of take a roundabout way of doing things, but they'll describe it by a certain incident by comparing it to something else.
Yeah.
You know, people don't say, like, I'm very tired. A fellow would say to you, I'd sleep on a clothesline. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it just conjures up this mad image, you know what I mean? You must be really tired if you could sleep like that, you know. Or, you know, we do it constantly, you know.
Yeah.
So I think Keane does that as well, and obviously does very beautifully and wonderfully, you know.
Yeah, and we always do it through telling little stories, little anecdotes about the people that we're describing as well.
Yeah. So I suppose Keane was on about loneliness, and he was on about humour, he was on about passion, he was on about love, he was just on about companionship. And because each person that obviously writes to him during the course of The Matchmaker, they all have different reasons for wanting to contact him, you know, some are sexual, some are just companionship, some are very much just loneliness is what they're suffering from, you know. So, and in the middle of it all, that he brings up these fantastic array of characters from all different walks of life, and so it was never written as a play, obviously, or what it was written originally as, obviously, you said on the book, Letters of a Matchmaker, you know, and it was adapted for stage, and So from that point of view, I think there's an awful lot of good writing in it. They're all like little pieces of prose, really, all the letters,
Yeah.
And so the narrative in it is quite loose in a sense, although there is a sort of a tie-up of things, and there is connections between the matchmaker and all these individuals, some more than most, which give it a sense of narrative, not even a sense of it, they do give it a narrative, And the piece itself is beautiful, like, as I said, because each individual letter you could take it separately on its own even,
And the part that you play of the actual matchmaker, I mean, what was it about that part that you liked, that kind of you gravitated towards?
Well, it's funny because somebody gave me another play lately now over the last week or 2 weeks to read. It's going on in the spring in Dublin, and it's one of, I mean, I've done the field, I've done the hiker, I've done Sive, I've done Sharon's Grave, and I like Keane, I love his writing, and I feel I'm pretty close to it because, it kind of spills over into West Limerick as well, and me being based in County Limerick, I feel that I've an affinity with it to some extent, But, I mean, I kind of read that play about 3 times. I had read it years ago, and after reading it, I just knew that it wasn't one of John B's best, or I just felt there wasn't enough in it, Maybe I'm wrong, and I sort of said, no, I'm not going to do that. And what made me do The Matchmaker was just the complete opposite, I suppose, really, although it wasn't the play as such, but the language and the quality of just everything in it, the writing and the whole lot was just superb,
And Mary McAvoy.
Yeah, and working with Mary, of course, has been a joy. Like, it's been absolutely brilliant. So, so I think we've managed to get a lot from it, like from the text. I think we've managed to really bring it to life,
She plays the part.
It's good when it's not a play as such, because we didn't have any stage direction. There's no, there was nothing telling you this is a set. This is, it was completely.
Was it open to your own interpretation, really?
Yeah, you're working with a blank canvas, which is a lovely thing to do as well,
Yeah, gives you great freedom. Mary's part in it is a part of a disgruntled customer, if you like, that you match her up and she's not very happy with the husband she got.
Yeah. Well, she plays a variety of characters in it, but I think Fanula Crust is probably his main nemesis, if you could call it that, in the play. But in the course of it, because he matches her up twice, and 2 of the husbands die on her,
Yeah.
And she's fairly fed up now with the matchmaker at this stage. But she says herself, 3rd time lucky, and she goes again.
She should have got a money-back guarantee.
Yeah. Well, she thinks she has anyway, but there's a little bit of wrangling about that, like about bargains and deals and what was promised and what wasn't, and she has a very strong character. Fanula is very strong, and then she plays Lena McGee, who's a lovely character. A lovely twist in the end of it with the matchmaker and Lena, which is not expected, but I think there's hints of it there through the show, She's a lady that has been widowed as well, and then there's a younger lady she plays, and she's found her match and she's very happy, and there's another lady then again in County Clare, and she wants to get someone for her brother. So Mary plays a variety of characters in it, which is lovely because they're all very different, and in a sense, like, Mary brings a great kind of, she doesn't change costume or anything, neither of us do, but we just get in and out of the characters, which allows us sort of to do stuff physically and, facially and everything like that, which is lovely,
Yeah, and
we can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and it's quality acting, really, to just, bring out each of the characters just with one actor.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's the other thing that drew me to The Matchmaker as well, because I did Under Milkwood a few years back, about 10 years ago now, I think, and it was a lovely piece to do from the point of view, like we did it as a two-hander, And there's a lot of characters in Under Milkwood and a lot of voices, but once again, bringing it to the stage and just doing it with 2 people was a kind of a real challenge and exciting, and it was great. And I think The Matchmaker, was the same thing, As I said, just the idea of having the blank canvas is great,
Yeah, you must get a lot of satisfaction from it then when you actually do it and it's appreciated then by an audience.
Oh yeah, and then especially if you feel you've cracked it to some extent, that you really have got something out of it, or you've brought something to it, and I think, we've been very lucky with the play, because I think every night we've done it since we started doing this show. Like, I know it's an awful thing to say and a dangerous thing to say, and I don't think in a very arrogant way, but I think absolutely every single night we've done it, we've got a standing ovation, And I know myself from performing for years, like, it's, audiences just don't stand up for nothing, so
Yeah.
they really enjoy it, and I think they want to show their appreciation for it. So I think that's a real kind of, for me, I kind of take that as a sort of a yardstick for the piece itself, even,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's the piece itself, and then there's the actors. I mean, it doesn't come alive unless it's portrayed to the audience in a particular way.
Yeah. I will, hopefully.
Okay. John, it's on the 25th of November in the Dean Crowe Theatre in Athlone. John, thank you very much for joining me.
Not at all. And you might know it or not know, but my father, John Kenny, came from Athlone.
Did he?
He did, from Magazine Road.
Really? I know that, yes.
Yeah, well, that's where, so I'd say hello to all my relations up around there.
You've got lots of them. John Kenny, thank you very much.
Not at all, Paul. Thanks for having me on.